All right, so I am in New Mexico, the city of Las Cruces, which is a little town outside of a mountain range called the Organ Mountains. And I am getting ready to head up the highest peak in that range, which is called Organ Needle. And I had never heard of the Organ Mountains or Organ Needle before like a month ago. And I saw a picture of the mountain range online and the city of Las Cruces, and I decided to check the place out for myself. And I've never climbed in the Southwest before, so this is new for me. Now it is December right now, almost New Year's, and because it is the Southwest and the desert, I thought it was going to be a little bit warmer outside at night. But then I have to remember that at night in the desert, it gets cold. And so I didn't quite dress appropriately. I didn't quite bring enough layers. I bring just a few cotton hoodies, like the one I'm wearing now. But we'll just have to deal with that tomorrow morning. So the mountain peak is, as I mentioned, the highest one in the range. And the peaks are very dramatic in terms of their shape. But it's supposed to be a relatively straightforward hike to get to the top. I know a lot of people from the area like to do this hike. And so I'm just getting ready now to, make myself some dinner and get ready for tomorrow morning. I'm staying in an Airbnb right now in Las Cruces. And I love staying in Airbnbs because then I get to use someone else's kitchen. And I love exploring other people's kitchens. I love cooking in other people's kitchens so I can see what kind of tools they have, what kind of utensils they have, and I can get ideas for my own culinary development. For example, right now I have copper pans, and I have never cooked with copper pans. I usually use cast iron, and sometimes I use titanium. It depends on what I'm cooking. But if I'm cooking beef or chicken, like for example today, I'm cooking chicken, I would normally use cast iron. So right now I'm just seasoning my meat here. I'm using garlic powder and a few other seasonings that I picked up from the local Albertsons nearby. And I have to say, my favorite seasoning, my favorite condiment, perhaps even my favorite substance of all time, is salt. Not counting water, because I love water. But I use salt on everything, and I use a lot of salt. Of all the condiments, I feel like salt is the most versatile. It has been used throughout the ages to preserve meat and to add flavor without adding calories, which is one of the reasons I like salt. I really started getting into cooking pretty much when COVID started. Now I had been cooking before that, but after COVID started, I started working from home more and spending more time at home. And after that, I pretty much started cooking every single meal myself. There are a few times where I don't cook, but it is very, very rare. Even if I'm on the road like I am now, I pretty much always cook. And some of the benefits of cooking are, well, you save money for one thing. You eat fresher ingredients, and you eat healthier. And plus, cooking is just fun. It's like an art, it's like, I don't know, it's like you have a palette and a paintbrush, and you're trying to paint yourself a meal. Sometimes people ask me, are you a vegetarian? And the answer is no. I am not a vegetarian, and I love meat, and I have quit pretty much every substance, every addiction known to man. And just so you know, I don't drink alcohol either. I haven't drank in about 4 years now. But one thing I will never give up is eating meat. There is something very fundamental to the human spirit about eating meat. And besides, meat tastes delicious. All right, so it's about 7:05 a.m. and the sources I looked at online said that the trailhead opens at 7 a.m. But when I went to the gate down Dripping Springs Road, it was closed, and the sign says the winter hours are that they open at 8 a.m., which is a little frustrating because it adds difficulty and risk to the equation. I always feel like the man-made obstacles are the most dangerous ones. But anyway, the other option I could do is I could go down Baylor Canyon Road. So Dripping Springs Road takes you to the main trailhead, but I believe there is another trail that you can take down Baylor Canyon, which would add like maybe a mile to the trip. So it's either I wait an hour for the main trailhead to open, which hopefully opens at 8, or I just take the side trail. All right, so here's a look at the Oregon Needle area. This one right here is not Oregon Needle. This is actually unnamed. I'm calling it Opium Needle. And Oregon Needle, the highest one in the group, is this one back here. And I believe it's that one kind of in the middle of the screen there. Not the far right, but like the middle. The way up is through this gully here. So I opted to park at the main trailhead, which is great because I'm closer. And so far I'm on a really good trail. The trail is nice. It's got a lot of yuccas and some cactus and stuff. You know, very deserty. All right, so I'm seeing the route for the first time, and I'm getting pretty close. It looks like what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna head up this green patch right here, and then you see that tree right there? Kind of like in the middle of the screen, right there. That right there, according to the sources I read, is the entrance to what is known as Dark Canyon. Basically, it's like a canyon that goes between these two rock formations here. And then you traverse up that, and then the summit is that one right there. And I think the way to get up there is to kind of go around the backside here. I don't know, I guess I'm going to see when I get closer. But it's supposed to be pretty easy. Maybe hard class 3, easy class 4. Alright, so I'm making my way up here. Found a little duck down here. And so that's good because it lets me know I'm on the right path. But I'm kind of in a little bit of a maze here. There's like a block here. And at first I was thinking I need to go around it, like on this side. Like over there. But I think I'm supposed to go all the way up this gully here and then make a left. So I don't want to give you bad advice, but I think this is the way. As you can see, it's a little claustrophobic in here, but I assure you there is a trail, although it's not super easy to follow. This is like a completely different head wall. I just wasted like, I don't even know how long, probably an hour going that way. And I'm like pretty sure now that the real head wall is on the other side of this one. So I'm gonna go ahead and backtrack a little bit. All right, so I made it to the top of Dark Canyon, what I'm calling Dark Saddle here. And I didn't film much in there, but I'll try and film on the way back just so you can see what it's like. I really just wanted to get through it because I'm running late. It's already like 1:40. So the rest of the route goes over here, down this way, around the backside, and then this right here is the summit. So I'm about the same height as Half Dome, so I'm pretty high up right now. And I'm really glad I brought gloves because it is very cold. And as you can see, there's snow. So I think the way to go is down here, down the backside, and then up that way. Okay, so I made it to this rope section here. Now I actually brought with me climbing shoes, like rock climbing shoes. But I'm gonna try and use my boots here if I can. And if I need to, I can always change into my climbing shoes. But so far it seems pretty easy. Of course, it would be a little harder if I didn't have good hiking boots. All right, so let's go ahead and climb this little section here. I did actually change into my climbing shoes. And I jettisoned a few things. I left them down there. My boots and, you know, just other things I don't need. Let's see. Now, one thing I didn't bring with me this time, which I usually bring, is a helmet. And I just figured that the risk was pretty low and that I wasn't going to need a helmet. think that's the summit right there. So this tower is definitely higher than that one. Summit register. I'll go ahead and sign that in a second. I think this is the tippy top. Wow. This is a really cool summit. Honestly, I really do think this is a hike. It's not a climb. The part that I did at the end, you really could do it in boots. And besides, there's like ropes and stuff there if you want to use those. So, I mean, this is a hike for the whole family, you know what I'm saying? Maybe this one's higher. I can't really tell. Or maybe that one's higher. Sometimes it's hard to tell. Oh, geez. Let's try that again. Balance. Can you balance on something like this? I don't think I can. Actually, let me take my backpack off. There. That is how you balance on a tiny summit block. Okay? Can't say I didn't make it official. That's the summit. Dude, this place is really cool looking. Like, look at that dome over there, dude. And then you have this thing. So, that right there, that's Dark Canyon. Let me show it to you. 1 second. So, originally, I was going around the other side of this formation here, and it's steep on that side. Because I thought that was Dark Canyon going over there, and then I realized the error of my ways. I saw the map, and then I backtracked, and I went down, back through this way, up here, and this is Dark Canyon right here. It's very hard to explain, but I'm gonna try and do my best when I show you the map. Anyways, just be warned, it's kind of easy to get turned around. But what an incredible place, man. I mean, there's not a lot of people who know about this place. You know what I'm saying? Like, there is nobody up here. And, I mean, it's just great up here, dude. You know? The views are incredible. Look at that, dude. Look at that. So that over there, this is that sub peak that I saw earlier. You know, the really pointy one right there. I don't know how you get up that thing. I really don't know. Because even to get there, you got to go through all kinds of brush and prickly things. Anyway. Yeah, dude, I'm just loving this view, man. I mean, look at that. Dude, I could stay up here forever. Make a little home up here, you know? Look at how dramatic that is, dude. You just see forever out here, dude. It's white sands over there. Looking north to, I don't even know this area, northern New Mexico, I guess. So this is a whole range of mountains that I've never heard of. looking that way, El Paso's over there. That's where I came from. That's the airport I came from. And Las Cruces is right there. That's where I stayed. All right, so let's go ahead and sign the old register here. On Organ Needle. It's the 29th of December. Done. All right, so I signed the register and it's getting pretty late. So I'm getting ready to head back to the car. This is honestly one of the most beautiful summits I've ever been to. New Mexico just has so much to offer. And one thing I love about New Mexico is that there's so much space here. You never feel like you're crowded like you do in big cities like San Francisco or LA or New York. And so it's nice to come here to just get away from that mentality and just breathe air. Here's one last look at the summit area before I head down. I don't know what this shovel's for. Just an incredibly beautiful summit up here. American flag, of course. Alright, so here's another look at the sketchy section. I mean, it's, you know, it's probably 25 feet down there. So if you fell, you would, you'd be injured. I don't think you'd die though. I guess it depends on how you fall. Actually, it depends on how you fall and how much you weigh. Did you know that? Because the more you weigh, the harder you fall. And it's not just an expression, it's actually true. Because if you think about like the equation of force, force is equal to mass times acceleration. So the more you weigh, the more it'll hurt when you fall off a cliff. This is why sometimes you see these like small little birds or rodents or things, they fall, and it doesn't really hurt them as much because they don't have as much weight as we do. As you can see, it's pretty straightforward to do this. I think you could do it even without climbing shoes, but I slipped a little bit there. Whatever. And you might be asking, why don't you use the ropes, Joey? Well, first of all, I don't know who set these anchors, dude. And second of all, I'm a purist, man. I'm not like a huge fan of this kind of stuff, but whatever. So this is Dark Canyon. As you can see, you have this wall on this side, and then as you look out into the horizon, you can see this is that other wall right there. It's a fake wall, and down there is where I came from. Also, there's a lot of brambles and trees and things. You gotta watch your head, and there's a little more snow higher up, but there's a little bit of snow in here. I mean, it is winter after all. So right now it is the next day and I'm at White Sands National Park. Now I got back to the car pretty late last night and I didn't film any of this, but I went through a little bit of an ordeal yesterday. So let me explain to you what happened, okay? As you know, I got to the summit late, around 3:30 or so. And that is because I ended up wasting about an hour and a half going up the wrong way. Basically what I'm calling now Wrong Way Canyon, which is basically parallel to Dark Canyon. It looks very similar. It has walls on both sides. And there's a used trail that I was following that led that way. And then at one point, I discovered I was in the wrong canyon, turned around and backtracked and went up Dark Canyon the correct way. And you'll know you're in Dark Canyon because it has walls on both sides that continue the entire length of the canyon, up through the saddle and beyond. But by the time I got to the summit, it was around 3:30. By the time I left the summit, it was around 4 because I was taking pictures and stuff. And so I knew I was coming down late. I knew I was going to be coming down in the dark. Remember, this is winter, so the sun goes down early. And so I thought I'd be okay because I had a headlamp. Now I did my best to make it down the trickier route finding sections, like towards the top, what I'm now calling the maze. It's like a whole bunch of random use trails that go like nowhere. You really have to know kind of where you're going in that section. And I made it through that section, I made it back to the saddle, and I thought I was home free. So I was digging around in my pack at that point, because it was like dusk at this time, and found my headlamp, turned it on, and it just, for whatever reason, it just didn't turn on. There was no light that came out of it. And I don't know if this is the kind of thing where I just didn't charge it, or maybe it got like pressed or something like in my pack and it just like drained the battery. I don't know. For whatever reason, I didn't have any light. And so I was like, okay, I still have a little bit of like dusk light left. And so I'm gonna kind of rush through this section as fast as I can to get like down towards like the easier trail section. Because there is still a little bit of route finding to do. It's easier said than done to not get lost up there. And that's exactly what happened to me. I got lost. So at one point I found myself off trail and I was like picking my way through yucca plants and cacti and brambly things. And I was legitimately lost. I couldn't find the trail, in other words. And I was looking for it, and I figured, you know what, Joey? You might have to actually spend the night out here because it doesn't make sense for you to continue pressing forward in the dark because then you risk getting more lost. And so in daylight, you'd be able to see the trail easier than in the nighttime. But thankfully I had the 66i, the Garmin 66i here, and I was able to, you know, like follow my track, like find my track that I took up and just retrace it. Now, the thing with the track though is that it's not like super accurate. And so even though like it said I was on my track, I couldn't see the trail. And so I was still like looking around to try to find it. And it took me a while to find the trail. Eventually I did find it. And I ended up following my track basically with the 66i. And if it wasn't for that, there's no question. I definitely would have had to spend the night out there because there was no light, you know? But once I got down to like the lower sections, you know, like the easier sections, I felt like I was home free and I was able to kind of navigate with like the light from this thing, you know? And I made it back to the car like in one piece and everything without having to spend the night. And I was relieved. But the other problem too is I was worried about the gate because as you go in, there's like a gate that you have to pass through. And my concern was that the park service was gonna like close and lock that gate and I was gonna be stuck inside. But they basically put this on my windshield and it basically says that the gate is closed, but all you have to do is like push it open and then just close it when you leave. And so I was able to do that and make it back to my Airbnb. And I'll tell you one thing, when I got back to my Airbnb and I had a nice hot shower, like I've said this before in other videos, but like there is nothing about a shower on its own that's particularly enjoyable. But a hot shower in comparison to that, like thinking that I was gonna have to spend the night out there, that was one of the best showers I've ever had in my entire life. And I was so grateful to be back in a warm bed that night. So let me go ahead and show you on the map where I went. This right here is Dripping Springs Road. And this is the road that you take to get to the official trailhead for Oregon Needle, which is here. Now, when I got to the gate, which was right about here, at 7 o'clock in the morning, it was closed. Because during the winter, the park opens at 8 o'clock instead of 7. And so then I had to, you know, I could have driven back this way. I could have went up Baylor Canyon Road and parked my car here instead. And that would have added like another mile or two to the hike. In other words, I would have started the hike here instead of here. But I was a little concerned about the safety of leaving my car here and other reasons. And so I decided to kind of just wait at the gate for it to open. And so then at 8 o'clock, the gate opened and I parked my car here. And there is a $5 fee to park your car here and it is cash only. And I didn't know that. And so then because all I had was a 20, I actually had to spend 20 bucks to park my car here. So the first thing I did was, the trailhead is very clearly marked. There's a big sign. The first thing I did was I saw Oregon Needle and I took a compass bearing of it from the trailhead. And what that did is that helped establish a line of sight between these two landmarks. In other words, if at any point I was lost, and I actually did get lost, I would be able to, reach that line of sight and follow it back to the car if I was to follow a straight line. Of course, it's easier said than done because the terrain is very difficult to follow in a straight line because of the topographic features, but also because of the yucca plants and the cactus and the other spiky things. But it was just helpful to know that I had that in my back pocket from an orienteering standpoint so that I knew how to get back to the car. The other thing is there's a really prominent feature here. I call this the fin. It's like a big rock feature like right here, and it's right next to the trailhead. And so it's helpful to make a note of that as you pass it so that you know that the car is basically right there. So the first part of the trail is very sandy and flat and very easy to follow. And there's a handful of side trails that lead you over here and stuff. And there's one right here, I think it's labeled, it's called like Fillmore Trail, I think. And other trails lead you to places like Oregon Peak and other sub-peaks. This is the highest one in the range, Oregon Needle. And so that's the one you want to go to. So then you take a left here, and this takes you into like some more foresty, vegetation area. And then once you get to right about here, there's like a really prominent wall here. I call this the north wall. And what it does is it actually creates a lot of shade. One thing I'll say about the hike is there's actually a lot of shade in it, more than I was expecting. And so then this part is shaded. There's a big wall here, and you kind of follow that. And right about here, it starts getting really steep. And then you reach this point. This is what I call the saddle. Now there's a really prominent rock feature here. It's more of just kind of like a little hill. And it'll be on your right as you reach the saddle. And once you get to the saddle, you get to kind of the hard part, okay? Everything beyond the saddle, I consider this part of what I call the maze. And now there is actually a trail. I don't want to scare you. There is a trail, but it is, kind of difficult to follow. And there are also a lot of side trails that lead nowhere. For example, the trail that I followed at first was one that led this way. And I thought I was taking Dark Canyon, but I was actually kind of on the other side of it. And so then I discovered the error of my ways right about here. And then I turned around and went up Dark Canyon, and it ended up taking like an hour and a half out of my hike. And so then the actual summit is here, but what you do is you reach this saddle here. I call it Dark Saddle. And you'll know you're there because you have walls on both sides the entire way, steep walls. The summit on the left, and then this big fin type thing on the right. And then you descend down maybe like 100 feet, and you turn around the backside of Oregon Needle. And that's where you find those two ropes that are attached there. And that's like the 3rd class / 4th class section. I really think after looking at the footage, I think it's actually 4th class. It's easy 4th class. But I don't want to intimidate you. It's actually not that hard. And once you pass that section, the rest is super easy. And then you're at the summit. All right, so here is a zoomed in look at the section I call the maze. As you reach the top of the saddle, and the saddle is here, you're going to see on your right, kind of like a hill. I call this the rock feature. Everything beyond the saddle here is part of the maze. And the reason I call it the maze is because it's very thick, there's a lot of vegetation here, and very claustrophobic. You're shimmying your way through these tiny little spaces with branches and prickly things poking you. And there's a lot of little random side trails that lead nowhere, you know what I'm saying? One of them in particular, the one I followed, went this way. And I thought I was in Dark Canyon because I saw on my left this big wall here. And I thought that was the head wall of Oregon Needle. But it wasn't until I got to right about here and I had this big expansive view down here that I realized I was in the wrong place because I knew that I needed to be between two walls to be in Dark Canyon. So I turned around and then I found Dark Canyon and went up it. And there was snow in it when I was there because it was winter, not much. But it is a little bit of random kind of scrambling and things you got to do to get up here. And then once you get to the top of this, I call this Dark Saddle, you'll know you're there because you have walls on both sides and you can't see anything at this point except for this view, like a very small view to the right. And so as you descend here, you're going to go down maybe 100 feet, maybe 200 feet, and then around the backside. It's pretty clear where you go because there's a trail here. And then once you get to right about here, you're going to see the first of the rope areas, like the 3rd class / 4th class rope areas. The first one is the easier one. I think it really is probably 3rd class. And then the second one is right afterwards, and it's the harder one. And that one, I think, after looking at the footage and thinking about it, I really do think it's 4th class. It's very easy 4th class, and it's very short, but it definitely is not 3rd class. And so then after you climb up that section, you're basically home free. Once you get to right about here, you're going to see on your right like a sub-peak, which looks cool, but it's not the summit. The summit is on the left, and so you follow a really obvious trail to the summit, and then there you are, Oregon Needles summit. Okay, so the last thing I want to show you is my descent route and what happened on my descent. So as you know, I summited late around 3:30, and I left the summit around 4. So by the time I got to the saddle, which is around here, it was already basically golden hour. The sun was just about to go down. And so then I was digging in my pack, found my headlamp, and then I realized it didn't work and that I had no light. So then I kind of hurried down as fast as I could down this section here, and it was somewhere around, I don't know where it was probably somewhere around here where I kind of deviated from the trail a little bit because I was going so fast, and found myself kind of, in yucca plants and cactus and things. And then I was trying to find the trail, I was trying to regain it, and I kept crossing it several times and I couldn't find it. It's not super easy to find. And so I became a little bit, concerned about whether or not I should continue following the GPS track, in the dark, or just staying put and waiting until morning when I had light. Because I didn't want to get myself more lost or worse, injure myself, if I fell or something like that. And so it does sound pretty crazy, when I say it like that, but the reality is I had water, and I had food, and I had warm clothing, and so I would have been fine. I've done stuff like that before where I've slept in the middle of nowhere, at night with no sleeping bag, and I was fine. It sucks, but I've definitely done it before. So it wouldn't have been the first time I'd done something like that. But I decided I really wanted to get home, and it wasn't impossible to find the trail, and so with my 66i, I was able to kind of illuminate my path a little bit. I still had plenty of battery with it. And so then I ended up, being able to retrace my steps. And once I got to right about here, it was pretty much, I was home free basically. And so that's kind of how I got home. So what do you think about my decision making? Do you agree with it? Do you disagree with it? Let me know in the comments. Once again, thank you for coming along with me on this trip. And I hope you enjoyed my summit of Oregon Needle. Until next time.